Okay, let's unpack this. We are jumping straight into the really unsettling world of Dr. Nora Davis.
Hmm.
She is a highly accomplished general surgeon, known for her precision and, well, her ice-cold temperament. Her current professional life is this meticulously constructed fortress.
It really is. It's built brick by brick, and it's built for one reason, right? To keep a specific, terrifying past out.
Exactly. You sent over a huge stack of source materials, and they all detail this desperate, decades-long attempt to outrun an inheritance she never, ever wanted.
And that would be the legacy of a notorious serial killer, a man known only to the public as the Handyman.
That's the one.
So I think our mission today, it isn't just to track a plot, it's really to analyze a psychological defense mechanism that is under a full-scale assault.
Right. We need to look at how Nora's constructed identity, Dr. Davis, the successful, emotionally sterile surgeon, is just violently disassembled.
Yes, and it happens when the horrifying and, unmistakable signature of her imprisoned father, Aaron Neerling, suddenly surfaces in the present day.
This narrative, it's just a brutal exploration of so many things. Present-day framing, profound childhood trauma, and this terrifying concept that evil might be rooted not just in environment, but in your blood.
Our sources lay out all these chilling details. You have the facts of her professional life, her sort of doomed attempts at any kind of human connection.
And then these devastating revelations that ultimately just shatter her whole sense of self. It leaves her completely exposed to a predator who seems to know her every single move.
So the core question we have to grapple with here is, it's chillingly simple, but it's also existential.
How do you escape a destiny that's rooted in blood and family?
Especially when maybe someone you see every single day, is determined to force you right back into it.
It's not just a thriller.
Not at all. It's a study in nature versus nurture, played out under the threat of a life sentence. We really need to go deep into the mechanics of her survival.
Okay, so let's begin with the fortress itself. This persona she built, Dr. Nora Davis. She operates out of Corey and Davis Surgical Associates. Tell us a bit about this professional life.
Professionally, Nora is. She's elite, highly skilled. She operates with this ruthless efficiency that kind of mirrors the meticulousness we later find out about in her father's criminal nature.
That's a chilling parallel.
It is, but she has successfully channeled that high-focus, high-stress capability into saving lives. She maintains this radical emotional distance. She's often described as barely remembering her patients' names, working nonstop.
And that's not just her being forgetful, is it? It's a choice.
It's completely deliberate emotional compartmentalization.
So why do that? Why compartmentalize names and faces, but then dedicate your entire life to their internal anatomy?
Because for Nora, human connection is dangerous noise. Her focus is clinical, it's pure. Her mind is like a perfect memory bank for blood vessels, for anatomical structures, surgical procedures.
The things she can control.
Exactly. Those are details she can sketch out with her eyes closed. They're predictable, logical, but the messy social data, the feelings, the identities, the history, all of that is deliberately discarded because it represents a vulnerability.
They're the entry points.
They're the entry points through which her past could find her. Her professional success is literally a defense mechanism against humanity itself.
And within that fortress, she has her professional partner, Philip Corey. And he's the total opposite. Handsome, flirtatious.
I think the source material even called him Dr. McFadden.
It did. And they have history. He was her senior resident, and he recruited her specifically by promising her professional autonomy.
It's fascinating how Philip functions, really, as Nora's emotional decoy. Their relationship is defined by this intense, almost aggressive professional competition.
They track their operative volume count.
Like a sport.
Yeah.
And this competition, it's one of the only ways Nora engages on a deeply committed level. It's safe for her because it's all contained by measurable metrics, by KPIs.
But she holds him in utter contempt, doesn't she? His personal life, at least.
Absolutely. She respects his skill. He is, by all accounts, an exceptional surgeon. But she just dismisses his chaotic personal life.
The acrimonious divorce where his ex-wives slashed his tires, his constant infidelity.
Right. And that visible external chaos is exactly what makes Philip safe for Nora. By focusing her contempt and her competitive energy on his very visible, very superficial drama, she successfully deflects others from looking too closely at her own meticulously guarded inner life.
His drama is her camouflage.
It's the perfect camouflage.
Let's look at the office staff, too. There's Harper, the young receptionist. Nora initially resents Philip for hiring her, someone so young and pretty long dark hair, blue eyes.
But then something shifts. Nora becomes protective of her,
Yeah.
especially after Harper goes through a bad breakup.
And that flicker of protectiveness, that seems really significant, a crack in the armor.
It's a huge crack. It speaks to the deep, repressed maternal or empathetic instincts she tries so hard to crush. She resents the potential distraction Harper poses, but she can't help but care for someone she sees as vulnerable.
Which probably links back to the victims her father chose.
I think it has to. But even that care is contained within the safe, transactional walls of her office. This entire professional life is the constructed identity, built piece by piece to suppress Nora Neerling.
Let's talk more about that construction.
Yeah.
Specifically, her calculated solitude is radical. Decades of self-imposed abstinence from any meaningful relationships.
That fear of commitment is absolute, and it's rooted in what she sees as a toxic, destructive bloodline.
Yeah.
The sources spell out her rationale perfectly. She thinks, well, everyone knows what came next for my father.
So for her, commitment, marriage, children, it doesn't lead to happiness. It leads to destruction.
Inevitably. Shared notoriety, destruction, and ultimately, death. She successfully transmuted the fear of notoriety into this ethical mandate of self-imposed absolute solitude. She believes her bloodline is inherently toxic.
Making any future family an endangered population.
Exactly.
Which brings us to her one single ritual. The moment of controlled decompression. The old-fashioned.
Yeah.
Dark, boozy, sweet, and bitter.
She's been drinking it since she was 21, maybe even a little before.
And this is where it gets really interesting, right?
Yeah.
Regarding her subconscious ties to the past.
Oh, this is fascinating. The old-fashioned is the perfect symbol for Nora herself. Complex, controlled, hiding deep bitterness beneath a smooth, sweet surface. But more importantly, we learn it was her father's favorite drink, one he had nightly with dinner.
Wow. So even as she is consciously trying to destroy every single trace of Aaron Neerling in her life, she is performing this ritualistic, nightly tribute to him.
Precisely. It implies a kind of sensory conditioning that is just impossible to shake. She's destroying the written link, those weekly letters, but she's maintaining this profound chemical and emotional link through habit.
It's the ultimate proof that escaping her father's identity isn't just a conscious decision, it's a constant internal war.
And maybe the bitter element of the drink. Perhaps that's her conscious reminder of what that shared habit cost him and what it could cost her.
Let's move to that weekly ritual you mentioned. The correspondence from Aaron Neerling, the handyman, who's serving 18 life sentences. He writes to her every week.
The letters are a brilliant detail, but I think we need to focus less on the tight, compact handwriting, which is a hallmark of his control, and more on Nora's response. Why does she read them every single week?
She doesn't have to.
She doesn't. It implies a need for, I don't know, validation or maybe a constant measuring stick for her own moral distance from him. She needs to check in with the monster in the mirror to make sure she's still morally distinct.
And she reads them, but then immediately rips them up.
Symbolic destruction. She refuses to archive the connection or the emotional payload of the message. She has to consume the information, the confirmation that he's still there, still maintaining control in some small way, but she absolutely refuses to allow that evidence to persist in her world.
That sounds exhausting.
Utterly exhausting, and it fuels the high-stakes gamble she's taking.
And that gamble hinges entirely on anonymity. The driving fear that dictates every life choice is exposure. She avoids the police station at all costs because, as the sources state, a simple background check will reveal exactly who I am.
And that's the central conflict of her adult life. She can't go to the police, even when she's being actively threatened, because the consequences of exposure, losing her professional identity, losing the fortress, that's worse to her than the physical threat to her safety.
Her life isn't just self-defense.
It's preventative warfare against her own history.
The moment the cracks start to show in this fortress is when Nora is at Christopher's bar, and she runs into a sequence of really unwelcome connections. Let's start with Henry Callahan.
Callahan is the definition of the boundary-violating patient. Stocky, middle-aged, and Nora recognizes him immediately by the diagonal scar she left from his gallbladder surgery.
And he crosses a line.
He does. The critical shift is when he moves beyond just polite conversation. He buys her a drink, he's overly familiar, and then crucially, he rests his hand on her knee during a follow-up and gives it a squeeze.
That unsolicited, inappropriate touch.
Instantly registers him as a highly personal, clumsy threat.
And Nora's professional reaction is immediate and ruthless. She plans to have him fired from the practice.
Right. She uses her professional power to eliminate threats in her periphery. She controls the environment. But then there's Brady Mitchell, the chatty bartender who steps in, defends her, and makes her a perfect old-fashioned.
And the recognition is delayed, which again speaks to Nora's intentional detachment. But she realizes he looks strangely familiar.
He's her ex-boyfriend from college, an adorably dorky computer science TA. And this is a really critical resurfacing link.
He was the one who loved slasher films.
And disturbingly, own a mask of the handyman's face. This connection should be a massive red flag, a visceral link to the violent culture her father inhabited.
But she doesn't see it that way at first.
No, initially she's so desperate for any non-threatening connection that she just dismisses it, categorizing him as harmless. He becomes her brief, fragile, emotional escape route.
Now the narrative pivots. It goes from creepy encounters at a bar to genuine, organized physical threats. On 2 separate nights, Nora is followed closely on deserted roads by a blue Dodge with a dented fender.
Which matches the type of car Callahan drives.
Exactly. And they are riding her bumper.
This is the moment Nora realizes her environment is no longer just compromised, it's actively hostile. And her first response is reflexive. The sources tell us the question that just flits through her head is, what would my father do?
That is just. It highlights the profound depth of her dark conditioning.
It does, and she chooses not to call the police. The risk of exposure still outweighs the risk of physical danger, so instead, she chooses to confront the threat using the only tactics she knows.
Aggression and control.
The first night, she uses a legal deterrent, drives right into the local police department parking lot until the car passes.
But the second night is a significant psychological turning point.
The second night, she acts with surgical precision. She uses her intimate knowledge of the local roads. She accelerates down this narrow, stormy path she knows well, and it leads the pursuer to crash their car. A serious, likely life-threatening accident.
And the most important detail. Nora, using her phone via Bluetooth, calls 911 anonymously to report the crash, but she keeps driving.
She makes the conscious decision not to stop, not to provide aid, even though she is a trauma surgeon.
This is where we see the handyman's blood coming through.
It's the inherited instinct for survival and elimination, cloaked in the anonymous, detached action of a 911 call. She acts like a criminal, even if it's justified by self-defense.
That choice to report but not intervene is a pivotal moral compromise.
It instantly complicates her status as the innocent victim. She has dirtied her hands, figuratively and morally, and that is a key step in making the framing job easier for the real culprit.
And the immediate consequence of that moral compromise is the horrifying twist. Henry Callahan shows up at a food cart, apologizes, and is completely confused about the accident.
He drives a blue Ford, not a Dodge, and hasn't been in an accident in years.
So Nora checks the ICU census.
And she identifies the crash victim as William Bennett. This is a truly terrifying realization. She now knows a few things. The threat is organized. The pursuer was targeted, acting as a proxy, and she just left a man barely alive, believing she was acting in self-defense against the wrong person.
She's now operating not just against a vague threat, but against a systematic, unknown party that is actively tracking her movements and weaponizing her actions.
And the systematic targeting moves from physical pursuit to public suspicion. Detective Barber shows up at Nora's office. He's questioning her about Amber Swanson, a former patient.
Found mutilated and murdered in the San Joaquin River, with her hands severed.
Barber is shrewd, and the sources emphasize the chilling similarities between this new murder and the handyman's signature. Amber Swanson was 25, dark hair, blue eyes, the exact type Aaron Neerling targeted.
And the MO is repeated, severed hands. That detail is crucial because Nora is a surgeon.
The choice of victim and the choice of mutilation are calculated to draw a direct line between the imprisoned killer and his professional daughter.
Barber wastes no time. He quickly shifts focus, asking directly about Nora's identity and connecting her immediately to Aaron Neerling.
The psychological assault has begun, and the frame just accelerates with frightening speed when a second patient is murdered soon after. Shelby Gillis, 26.
Stab wounds, rope burns, and again found with severed hands.
The similarities are too striking to ignore, and the police are now entirely focused on the idea of a copycat, or worse, a protege.
And the news tightens around Nora when the detective reveals the planted evidence. Nora's distinctive green car was spotted near Shelby's home.
And her fingerprints were found on a cup inside.
This confirms it. The person framing her has intimate knowledge of her patients, her schedule, her location, access to her personal belongings.
Nora realizes she isn't just being questioned anymore. She is being methodically and effectively framed. The handyman's MO is back, And Nora, his daughter, is the prime suspect. The sophistication of it all points directly to someone who has studied her life as closely as she's studied anatomy.
To understand the intensity of Nora's present reaction, her fear, her desperation, we absolutely have to look back at her childhood. Age 11. This reveals the origins of her profound trauma. Let's start with those painful family dynamics.
The contrast between her parents is heartbreaking, and it sets the template for Nora's future, for her fractured identity. Her mother, Linda, is described as loving, obsessed with cooking, worried about Nora's social isolation.
But she's living under this constant, cruel, verbal abuse from Aaron Neerling. He attacks her relentlessly about her weight.
Calling her fat like a house or embarrassing.
This detail is essential. His capacity for cruelty wasn't just reserved for his victims. It permeated the home, creating this toxic environment that ultimately led to Linda's tragic suicide in jail after he was arrested.
And Aaron Neerling himself maintained that perfect facade. Handsome, charismatic, a phlebotomist skilled at sweet-talking people into letting him draw their blood, the ultimate trust exercise. He was rarely home, either working or, critically, down in the basement.
The basement is the key physical space of the trauma, the symbol of her cognitive dissonance.
Exactly. It's labeled Aaron's workshop for woodworking, but Nora notices the poor quality of the chairs he tries to make. The door is always locked, supposedly because it's dangerous down there with drills and saws.
It's the physical manifestation of her father's secret life.
It is. The space where he transmuted his charm into terror. But the most important sensory detail Nora recalls is the pervasive, sickening smell of lavender around that locked door.
Lavender, that innocent, calming scent, becomes her primary sensory trigger for murder and fear in the present day.
That is sensory conditioning at its worst. The smell of lavender, intended to mask the stench of decay and blood, becomes inexorably linked in her young mind to her father's violence.
So in the present, this trigger forces her to act out. Confronting Philip over the office soap, experiencing intense nausea and rage.
It's a permanent neural scar, a constant reminder that the horror she escaped is just a sniff away.
The emotional environment was just as difficult. Her parents frequently fought about Nora. Linda insisted Nora needs to see a therapist.
Saying things like, she's not normal and she doesn't even seem to care.
That parental discussion is the early definition of Nora's identity struggle, and it's deeply traumatic. Her mother saw her natural detachment, maybe a trauma response itself, as pathological, something that needed to be fixed.
But her father defended her. He'd assure Linda, she's fine, you're imagining things. And this isn't protection, it's sinister grooming. He sees the high-functioning detachment, the control, the lack of empathy his wife worries about, and he recognizes himself.
And he actively encourages it through gifts.
Yes. The penknife for protection, an early tool of violence, and the white mouse for her birthday, which later dies suddenly, strongly suggesting Nora may have had violent tendencies early on, which would validate her mother's concerns.
The moment of absolute clarity comes when she hears a muffled, screaming noise coming from the basement.
And she finds the knob unlocked, which is a seemingly minor detail, but one we have to analyze. Was it an oversight? Or was it a deliberate invitation from Aaron, testing her curiosity, tempting her to step across that threshold?
Downstairs, the incongruity is staggering. The workbench, the razor-sharp knife, bleach, the lavender air freshener.
And brownish stains that are definitely not paint. And then the horror. A sheeted crate emitting a muffled, unmistakable human sound.
And when her father reveals himself, the explicit grooming begins.
He doesn't deny the terror. He embraces it and uses it to cement their bond. He says, "You're like me, Nora. I see it in you." This is the moment her destiny is laid bare. He doesn't just present himself as a monster.
He presents himself as a partner.
Yes. That statement forces the 11-year-old Nora to look inward and ask, am I? Do I have this in me?
Which sets up the Marjorie incident. This becomes her pivotal moral choice, defining the adult Dr. Davis.
Marjorie Baker, the awkward, bullied girl. Nora, driven by this curiosity her father just validated, lures Marjorie to a quiet hiking trail. The pretense is a game, hunter and prey, and she forces her to take off her shoes. This is her ethical test run.
Marjorie twists her ankle, sees the penknife Nora is holding. This is the moment of decision.
But she recoils. She drops the knife, says, "You lose," and helps Marjorie home.
She realizes she's scared to commit the final act.
She chooses retreat over commitment to violence. That choice defines her. She decides in that moment to report her father to the police. The adult Dr. Nora Davis, the lifesaver, the emotionally distant controller, is forged in this instant of conscious moral rejection. She chooses not her nature, but her nurture.
And we see the ultimate twisting of that inherited capacity in her professional life. The sight of blood, the demands of surgery, they provide her with a focus, an adrenaline rush.
It's a chilling mirroring, a highly controlled way to engage the intensity of her inherited tendencies without crossing the ethical line. We see it in the surgery on Kayla Ramirez, the car accident victim.
When Nora is cutting into flesh, finding the bleeding vessel blindly, she gets that jolt of anticipation, that adrenaline rush.
And she recognizes it. She thinks, that must be what my father felt? But her crucial corrective thought follows immediately. He took those girls' lives. I'm going to save this girl. She channels the intensity of inherited evil into the meticulous, life-giving work of a surgeon, creating moral injury but preventing moral collapse.
The pressure on Nora escalates dramatically after Detective Barber's questioning. The threat shifts from a distant police investigation to direct physical intrusion. First, the letters return.
But they're clearly planted. 2 non-postmarked letters from Erin Neerling slipped under her back door. The second one contains the direct command, "Come see me, Nora."
This instantly confirms several things. The framer can mimic Erin Neerling's manipulation style, they have access to his handwriting, and they know Nora's home and schedule well enough to slip evidence under her door without her knowing.
This is highly calculated. Then she finds the puddle of dark red liquid in her basement, just where her cat was lapping, and she notices the light bulb is blown out.
The blown light bulb is a subtle but potent detail. It plunges the scene right back into the sensory atmosphere of her childhood trauma. The dark, mysterious basement.
Absolutely. The framer isn't just planting evidence, they're engaging in psychological warfare, deliberately recreating the conditions of her most profound childhood fear.
But the final, horrifying piece of evidence solidifies the frame beyond any doubt. After she flies to the prison and returns, this repulsive stench of rotting eggs and rotting cabbage.
Mixed with that triggering scent of lavender.
It leads her to find a severed human hand in a plastic bag in her car trunk.
That is pure horror movie territory. A severed hand in her trunk, the ultimate piece of planted evidence, directly linking her, the surgeon, to the mutilations. Let's just pause and consider the sheer technical difficulty of executing this frame.
This wasn't a rushed amateur job.
Not at all. It required access to a fresh victim, the surgical skill to sever the hand, knowledge of Nora's travel schedule, and the nerve to place it directly in her vehicle. The choice of the hand is profoundly thematic. It mocks her life-saving professional identity.
And her desperate, immediate response, driving far away to a closed Carl's Jr. and dumping it in a dumpster, it shows she knows how to dispose of evidence.
She's fighting fire with fire, using the grim lessons of her inheritance to try and save herself.
Driven by the command in that letter and her desperate need for answers, Nora visits Erin Neerling at Oregon State Penitentiary. She's looking for the source of the copycat, the faux protege she believes must be communicating with him.
And the prison visit is just a masterclass in psychological manipulation. Aaron is physically diminished, gray, hunched, shackled, but his penetrating gaze and calm, manipulative tone are still there.
He refuses to give her the answers she needs.
Instead, he taunts her. He asks, "It was you killed them, didn't you?" He tries to collapse her constructed reality by attacking the very foundation of her morality.
It's pure gaslighting.
Absolutely. He reveals that her mother sought psychological help for Nora because of her disturbing childhood actions, like killing animals. And then, the crushing blow. He implies Nora killed her mother, Linda, who committed suicide in jail.
He isn't trying to prove his innocence.
He's trying to prove Nora's inherent guilt. He wants to drag her down psychologically so she believes the frame is true, or at least that she deserves it.
And meanwhile, Nora fixates on Brady Mitchell, the bartender, as the prime suspect, the ultimate red herring.
She initially seeks comfort, sleeping with him again, but her paranoia just blooms. Her focus on Brady is a desperate attempt to externalize the threat.
She wants it to be him, the adorably dorky, slasher film-loving ex-boyfriend.
Her suspicions are fueled by the old woman, Mrs. Chelmsford, screaming about him torturing somebody upstairs, and Brady's locked office, which is later revealed to be his young daughter Ruby's pink room.
His hobby, his mask collection, his proximity, it makes him the perfect, emotionally distant villain in her mind.
So she confronts him, accuses him, and flees, effectively burning the only new relationship she had tentatively built.
The events just accelerate from there. Nora's tires are slashed, a grim echo of Philip Corey's divorce drama, forcing her to accept a ride home from Philip. When they arrive, Detective Barber is waiting.
And that forces Nora to reveal her identity to Brady, isolating her completely.
Now she's isolated, emotionally raw, and her critical surgical mind turns back to Philip. She starts noticing his suspicious behavior, gossiping about her legal problems, flirting too much with Harper.
She rushes home, worried for Harper's safety, fearing Philip had taken the dark turn she initially suspected in herself. It's an act of misplaced protection, and it leads her straight into the trap.
But the truth is exponentially worse and utterly devastating. She finds Philip tied to a wooden chair in her basement, covered in blood. His left hand, his dominant operating hand, has been severed.
And the captor is revealed, Harper, her young, sweet, vulnerable receptionist.
This is the ultimate narrative gut punch, the perfect deployment of the least suspected person trope.
Harper reveals she is Nora's full sister, born after their mother became pregnant and then killed herself after Aaron Neerling's arrest. Harper was put up for a sealed adoption, but she found her way back.
Having been taught everything she needed to know by their father, including how to use a cookery knife.
Harper's motive is pure inherited vengeance. She is furious at Nora for betraying their father and denying her the family she was meant to have. She sees Nora as the original traitor.
So Harper confesses everything.
She was the systematic, calculating force behind the entire frame. She worked with Nora to track the victims. Amber and Shelby were Nora's patients. She planted the evidence, the keys, the fingerprints.
And was planning to kill Philip, frame Nora for all the murders, and leave the police an anonymous tip.
Exactly replicating the act Nora committed 26 years prior to protect the world from their father. It's a tragic study in inherited rage versus chosen morality, played out by two daughters of the same monster.
Nora has to use her last reserves of wit and inherited psychological skill against her own sister. She stalls Harper.
Using her father's manipulation tactics, claiming she keeps remnants of her own victims in a nearby crate.
And Harper's pride in their shared dark nature and her curiosity about Nora's supposed secret past.
Yeah.
It wins out.
She pauses, ready to look in the crate, which of course is just filled with toilet paper. That split second of distraction is what Nora needed. She tackles Harper.
Using the very manipulation she learned in that basement as a child to survive the final confrontation.
It's a horrifying realization. The only way to defeat the evil she inherited is to briefly to utilize its tactics.
The violent fight that ensues is interrupted by the unexpected hero, Brady Mitchell. He arrives, having followed Nora after she called him with a fabricated cat emergency.
A desperate last-ditch effort to lure him over as a backup.
And Brady's arrival is the necessary intervention. He sees the horrific scene, Nora pinning her sister next to a bleeding Philip, but he doesn't panic.
He points the gun, calls the police, forces Harper down. And Harper, proud of her crimes and convinced of her family mission, she confesses everything, which ensures Nora is ultimately cleared.
The physical scars are immediate and devastating. Philip survives, but his dominant left hand could not be reattached.
Which forces his retirement from surgery. However, the sources suggest he begins teaching anatomy and starts dating again, finding a new, less competitive path.
It's a thematic necessity, him losing his hand. It symbolizes the destruction of that professional, competitive fortress he and Nora inhabited.
But the most important scar healing is emotional. Brady proves his loyalty, providing the crucial counter-narrative to Aaron Neerling's influence. He assures Nora he knows she's a good person and believes her.
And he says, "I don't care who your father is."
That phrase is the true beginning of Nora's freedom. It separates her identity from her biology and her history.
A year later, Nora is actively building the life she thought she could never have. She's engaged to Brady. She adopts the stray cat, naming her Meowsy.
A name given by Brady's daughter, Ruby, and she buys Ruby too many gifts.
This quiet epilogue is profound. Nora's finally embracing connection and family. The overgifting to Ruby shows her desperate need to invest in the safety and happiness of this new, non-toxic family structure.
She accepts that Brady and his daughter are safe, and by extension, she's safe. She also finds closure by visiting her mother's grave. She stops the long-held resentment over Linda's suicide, finally understanding her mother's desperation and moral injury.
And the final, beautiful symbolic reconciliation stems from her pivotal childhood moment. Nora buys Baker's maple syrup.
That seemingly throwaway detail is hugely significant. It connects directly to the Marjorie Baker incident, the moment she chose not to follow her dark instincts 26 years prior.
Buying that syrup acknowledges and affirms that foundational choice.
Her identity is not defined by Aaron Neerling, the monster who saw himself in her, but by Nora Neerling, the scared child who dropped the knife. She chose the light, and now she is reaping the rewards of that choice.
This deep dive into Nora Davis's world, built and then violently dismantled, it really reveals the extreme lengths people go to, both to hide their past and to survive a setup orchestrated by the person closest to them.
Her own sister, a product of the very evil Nora tried to erase. The psychological toll of living a life of absolute self-control just to prevent a potential fate is, it's almost unimaginable.
What stands out to me is that Nora was constantly measured against her infamous father, yet her life became defined not by her inherited disposition, but by the pivotal moment she consciously chose not to follow his path.
Sparing Marjorie, fighting to save the crash victim, Kayla Ramirez, and eventually surviving Harper. She channels the intensity of her darkness into light, proving that our capacity for meticulous focus can be used for creation or destruction.
So does true identity lie in the blood we inherit, in the psychological conditioning we receive, or in the choices we make when faced with our darkest temptations?
Nora inherited the darkness. She felt the pull of the violence, but she chose the arduous path of building the light. It demonstrates that trauma may mark you, but it doesn't have to map your future.
And that leaves us with a final provocative thought. Nora was targeted by the person she trusted the most, the one who seemed the most vulnerable, the perfect receptionist, Harper.
Harper saw Nora's vulnerability and chose to exploit it, believing she was acting for her family's twisted honor.
So think about the person you least suspect in your own life, the one who seems the kindest, the most helpful, the most unassuming, and consider if they too might be hiding an agenda built on old grudges, deep resentments, and even deeper familial ties.
The lesson here is that sometimes betrayal comes wearing a winning smile and a perfectly tailored uniform. This deep dive should give you plenty to mull over long after the coffee is cold.